Thumbs up. Good afternoon and welcome for those of you in the room today and those watching online to the Tulsa Center for Spiritual Living. The topic for this month is Share the Dream at the Centers for Spiritual Living, and this week's deeper dive is called Going Further Together. And I'd like to thank Reverend Lynn for her talk last week, and I'd like to share that I was really struck in the way, Reverend Lynn, where you shared your words from the heart at the end of your talk about this center and about this place. That there is an energy here that goes back for decades. And it's an energy that continues to unfold in consciousness. And that we're all honored, Reverend Lynn, to have you as the senior minister here, knowing that you're holding a vision and joining what the history that's here before to take it into a new expression to meet the needs of this community and meet the needs of our world. And doing that through love and through visioning and through conversation. And I just wanted to really express my support for that energy shift that continues to evolve and unfold here at the center. This week's talk is inspired by Reverend Karen Wilson from the Center for Spiritual Living, Edmonton South, up in Canada. Religious science is really big up north in Canada. It's kind of interesting to know. We do have a worldwide presence, but in Canada, there are a lot of successful, thriving centers and people doing great work up there. The global themes for Centers for Spiritual Living in this year of 2021 examine and inspire the importance of cultivating a sense of wonder and interest wherever we are, whatever we're dealing with, an ability to deeply appreciate the everyday experiences of play and creativity and emotions, having a physical body, having relationships with others, communing with nature, experiencing work, whatever that looks like, and our finances, whatever that looks like, and looking into our home and our community, examining that sense of wonder that's present in our world today. Now, awe and wonder are present in the modest, ordinary things in our world. With a bit of practice and a bit of creativity, we can see the world with a curiosity that becomes a natural and maybe permanent part of our worldview. So today, let's look at that everyday wonder that's innate in all of our lives with our topic this week. Now, in last week's talk on the beloved community, Reverend Lynn discussed the African proverb, you probably all remember it, alone we can go faster, together we can go further. As we near the end of our journey for this year of 2021, moving into the fourth quarter, we keep in mind that it's community that brought us here. It's community that created this theme. It's community that created these talks. And it's community that shows up for the transformation that happens here. Together, as Centers for Spiritual Living, we work in harmony with one another, other faiths, and other peoples to envision a continually expanding world. We are uniquely situated to foster a global community at Centers for Spiritual Living, aren't we? We believe in co-creating a world that works for everyone, and by sharing the truths that we rely on in our lives. Where in our individual lives, our centers, our communities, our work, our families, and our world, can we embody a deeper expression of hope and oneness? Where can we invite others along for the journey in a way that is radically welcoming, radically loving, and radically inclusive? Oh, how easy it is to do all of those things when we're all on the same page with the same worldview. It's a little more complicated when we're not. I got a little story to tell you all. This story is about an aging farmer who was laying on his deathbed after toiling for years working on his farm. In his last days, he was worried about the welfare of his family. His three daughters could not see eye to eye, sibling rivalry. They quarreled day and night. What he worried would become of his family. He had tried speaking with them about the importance of forgiving and understanding and living in peace, but they ignored his wisdom and they grew more bitter by day. Finally, as his strength waned, he had an idea. He called his daughters to his bedside, asking the eldest to bring a bound up bundle of sticks. "Now, my daughter," he said, "I want you to break this bundle." The first daughter tried, and then the second, and finally the third. They were trying to break this bundle of sticks, but they could not break that bundle. "Now untie it," said the farmer, and he handed one stick to each of his daughters. "Go ahead and break your stick." And they were able to easily do this. He looked his daughters in the eyes and said, "You are like these sticks, my children. If you stick together, no thing will be able to harm you. But if you quarrel and divide yourselves, then you leave yourselves open for enemies, including each other, to destroy you." So think for a moment of experience in our lives, in your lives, where you stuck together with others, with families and with friends and with coworkers, where together you were stronger, more capable of bringing about changes in the world than you were when you were doing it alone. Or even more so, when you were counter to other people in your world. How really difficult it could be to bring about change and to make things different. Now, this theme can also be applied in the cultural and political level. Are there people in your cultural environment, in your religious group, your ethnic group, with whom you battle? And I use the battle widely, right? To where we have disagreements about what's happening in the world and how we move together. What can you do together that you cannot do divided? Can you just keep a distance from those people with a different worldview? What if those people offer something important to the common goal in the growing of the world? Now, at Centers for Spiritual Living, right? We have a goal of creating a world that works for everyone, right? We have a goal and a core belief in oneness. And Reverend Lynn shared last week, how do we know that we all share the same or even similar vision of what oneness may be? Just look at our world today, at the outer experience. It seems to not reflect that oneness in the physical, right? We appear to be more and more polarized and sometimes angry with each other. And sometimes at Centers for Spiritual Living, there's a broad brush assumption that we are all progressive, liberal, open-minded, and accepting. Well, as I shared earlier, we are uniquely situated to foster a global community and a world that works for everyone by sharing the truths, by uncovering where it doesn't look that way, and all those things that we rely upon. Now, of course, we are open-minded and accepting in so many ways. We recognize the diversity in our spiritual communities. We bring together elders and youth. We bring together people of different races, Black, brown, and white. We embrace the folks from the LGBTQ community and the straight community and everyone in between. We work collectively on projects to bear witness to the greater light that shines through. And when we experiencing that connection, that diversity, that connection, we are demonstrating an example of a world that works for everyone. But during this time of polarization in the world, it can be simple to assume that like-mindedness is same-mindedness. Oh boy, are we different sometimes. Our communities do indeed include conservative Republicans and liberal Democrats and moderates too across that spectrum. Our communities include people who choose to mask and get vaccinated. Our communities include those who choose to not mask and not get vaccinated, right? We are given opportunities to see our differences when we react to those differences. Sometimes kindly, sometimes not so kindly, right? Our human nature is informing that. And remember that when we are bundled together, we are stronger. And that when we're able to accept, engage with those who hold different views, we too are stronger, and so are they. I guess there's a limit sometime, though. And how do we know that difference? How do we know? Centers for Spiritual Living has an evolutionary vision, and one of those statements is, we envision a world where personal responsibility, this is our home office, our leadership. We envision a world where personal responsibility joins with social conscience in every area of political, corporate, academic, and social sectors, providing sustainable structures to further engage, to enhance our global consciousness. Personal responsibility, it's personal, it's me. And social conscience, how do I relate and interact with other people on the world, other people in the room who have a different spectrum, they're on a different place in the spectrum. Now, the leaders at Centers for Spiritual Living include Reverend Edward Villieu. He is the senior minister at Center for Spiritual Living Santa Rosa in Northern California, very large, thriving community. And he's also our community spiritual leader. He and others on the leadership team in the last year have decided to make very public statements in support of or opposition to controversial topics in the world today. Thank you. Now, what I know is they can't all come to the room and bang on the table and say, this is what I believe and y'all are wrong, right? They wouldn't be community spiritual leaders if they did that. They may have that feeling when they're walking on the street or watching cable news. But when they come together, I know that this team of leaders at CSL, they use prayer and they use spiritual practice to move beyond their personal, visceral reaction to the events in the world and move to spiritual principle, to the core values of our teaching. When we see something in the world, like the murder of George Floyd or the movement of Afghan refugees to America, or the mandate of vaccines for federal workers and their contractors, which includes all of my employees, we likely will have a reaction to that. And that reaction, Dolores says, yeah. And that is likely informed by our life experiences, right? Our life experiences and our core beliefs. And it also could be informed by love or by fear or a little bit of all of those things. As practitioners of our teaching, and we all practice this teaching, so we're practitioners, we can choose to discern our way through the core values and the core qualities of spirit that we know to be the spiritual truth of all, and to react from a place of love. Now, that could come after stomping of the feet and gnashing of the teeth and frustration and bitterness and complaining. But when we come together in community, when we get deeper in our spiritual practice, right, we get to kind of see beyond that and see the love beyond that. So I'd like to read a little bit of the statement from our leaders regarding vaccinations. Have any of you read this? It's interesting. And I think it's a great demonstration. So Centers for Spiritual Living says that this statement is offered into response for questions regarding our center's stance on COVID-19 vaccinations. Our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, wrote in The Science of Mind that there is no place for arrogance or holier than thou attitude. I could just hear Ernest saying that, right? The great have always been humble. The great have always been kind. The great have always been lovers of humanity. So they begin their statement there with great love and compassion for the diversity of thought that exists amongst our members. We acknowledge that our spiritual beings, we are self-determining and have personal freedom of choice. We acknowledge that this individuality expresses itself in a continuum of opinions related to vaccinations. Now, vaccinations, it goes on to say, are influenced by religion or spiritual or deeply held spiritual belief. And then they say, we are compelled to confirm that there are no precepts or strictures against vaccination or receiving medical treatment of any kind. Okay, I can buy that. Indeed, Holmes cautioned us not to say that everything is all right when it is all wrong. We don't say that people are not poor or sick or unhappy. We do not deny the existence of illness, nor do we deny the need for hygiene, taking a shower, or medical assistance. We unite within these modalities. We are grateful for the assistance of those things, and we cooperate with their efforts. Cooperate, meaning let's join prayer and medical treatment where we as individuals feel that it's appropriate, right? Though we may explore why sickness exists, when the original cause beneath that is harmonious and perfect, we will neither deny nor minimize the work being done in medical science. Nevertheless, we can add something important to care and healing of our physical bodies. The understanding that we are primarily spiritual beings with a mind and a body, and we have the tools of spiritual mind treatment to augment and enhance medical science, but it does not replace it. Indeed, we give thanks and celebrate the public health treatments worldwide. So then they say, taking this perspective into considerations, we ask members to apply their freedoms for the greater good, to consider how public health might be an expression of oneness. And most importantly, we urge our members to think about how to ensure the safety of the most vulnerable amongst us when we choose whether to vaccinate or not. They're not saying everyone has to go to vaccine. There are other things we can do, right? We're social distancing here. We're being cautious and careful. We're washing our hands. And of course, we're praying, right? I spend a tremendous amount of time with the public. I'm on airplanes. I'm serving passengers. I just finished a round of flights with hundreds of Afghan refugees, bringing them back to the United States. I was glad that I chose to get the vaccine. And I wore my mask, and none of my employees have been sick as a result of it. That's a decision based on my family, my profession, my life, and my world. But it leaves room for other possibilities, okay? Now, the vaccination is a personal matter. And they go on to say, as an interpretation of the science of mind, the executive team, using our founder's words as a guide, cannot in good conscience endorse religious exemptions against vaccines under the authority of the Centers for Spiritual Living, right? So if one of my employees came and said, hey, you're a minister with that church, would you give me a religious exemption so I don't have to get the vaccine? This is telling me that the organization would not support that. We believe in vaccination and we believe in the power of medicine and personal choice, but we wouldn't give that exemption to take to an employer to get out of it, which I think is an interesting statement. They're not saying it's right or wrong. They're saying the beliefs of the science of mind that allow for both put us in a position to not say, I can grant an exemption. And I'm not sure that any world religion on a global scale has endorsed that. Well, it'd be interesting to see. And then it goes on to talk about how, as spiritual leaders, we encourage our spirit leaders, our practitioners, our lay leaders, our ministers, to be clear about our position. You know what I mean? Like if I were to ask someone, are you okay hugging? You know, I'm wearing a mask, we're vaccinated. I'll let people know our status in community when we're leaders. Transparency, I think, is helpful here in community. And I see great examples of that here at the Tulsa Center. There's a couple great Ernest Holmes quotes. In the early days of spiritual therapeutics, it was believed that a practitioner could not successfully treat patients if they were being attended to by a physician, or if they were using material methods, you know, herbs or whatever, for relief. And Holmes then said, we know all that was based on superstition We no longer give it any spiritual thought. He said this in Living the Science of Mind. The metaphysician feels it's a privilege to be called into consultation with a physician or a psychologist. They have learned to appreciate the fields of medicine and of surgery. So some may believe one way or another on this issue, and that's okay. Is there room in this for love and acceptance? I found myself gnashing my teeth, especially when my boys who aren't vaccinated get seriously ill, which has happened, to not judge. And I have to remember to take 3 steps back, maybe 4, from my own reaction to what's going on, and to come closer to the place of love that's in the midst of that. Judgment offers nothing in spiritual discernment. Now, if I have those feelings, I may need to let them out, process them a little bit, but then I've got to come back to what I believe and then move into prayer for the person who is not feeling well and move into forgiveness for the thoughts that I'm having in judging the decisions of another person. I think it's just really interesting. So, how do we share the dream of a world that works for everyone, where personal responsibility joins with social conscience in every area of the political, corporate, academic, and social sectors, providing sustainable structures to further our global consciousness? One of the things that we'll often ask ourselves when we're in a place of upset, we do this in classes, we do this, you hear this from the pulpit. What is the truth here that wants to be revealed? If I'm in a place of upset or difference of opinion, what is the truth here that wants to be revealed? If I'm in disconnect or upset because some people have a different view of the world than I do, is oneness being called forward? You know, when we pray, we get anchored quiet and we pray to align ourselves with the qualities of God. Now, the qualities of God, we know their core, they're unbroken. They're beneath the surface of all of these outer experiences. When we learn to do spiritual mind treatment, we're talking about love, oneness, omnipresence, abundance, perfection, wholeness, grace. Those things as core principles can't be broken apart. They are a bundle wrapped up and tied. That bundle of sticks that farmer had is a great representation of God itself. And it cannot be torn apart unless we allow ourselves in the false beliefs of humanity to imagine that they're broken apart. And then we have wars and the illusion of wars. We have arguments. We have families spread apart. We have spiritual communities that explode apart. Or we can come together and have I want to say tough conversations, the real conversations where we work beyond those things. The other question we ask ourselves, what is the consciousness we are being called to shift? What consciousness am I bringing in? What is the consciousness we're being called to shift? Okay? If I'm in separation, I want to move towards oneness. When any of you sit with a minister or a practitioner in prayer, it may look like they're listening, and they may be. But really what we're doing is we're intuiting. Here's a big, long story about a problem in life that often deals with separation or from source, illness, dis-ease, lack. We're listening. We're not buying into the story. Our minds are automatically shifting to say, love, oneness, prosperity, abundance, wholeness. So you can take any problem that you're going to experience through story, and your minister practitioner of the science of mind will be working to bring that already in their consciousness before prayer begins, to know the truth behind it. Because that's what prayer ultimately is. It's alignment with that bundle, that wrapped up sticks quality of God, and then taking it forward. And then how do we lay the foundation for a world that indeed will work for all and not only for a select few, right? How do we do that? We ask Spirit. Mother, Father, God, infinite source, divine wisdom that's present in all the world today. I just watched the news tonight and I'm feeling really separate. What in this moment is it mine to do? What is mine to do? It might be to go march on the street. I was part of a group that shut down the highway a year ago after George Floyd was murdered. Probably not the smartest thing and kind of spontaneous and no one got hurt. That was mine to do in the moment. It also could have been mine to, what also was mine to do when there were flare bombs going off on Peoria, a block from my house, to sit in my driveway with my kids and meditate and to be quiet and to pray. It was not mine to do to run into the fray and fight with the authorities. It was mine there to be conscious, to be deep. What is mine to do in this? I'm in an argument or disagreement with a friend about whether to get vaccinated or not, or how they're living their life. Maybe forgiveness would be a great place to start. Maybe willingness and understanding that they're every bit an expression of the divine as I am. We share the dream. We're stronger together than we are apart. And we are all personally responsible on how the world is around us. So when each of us takes up our mantle, we do our part to move the world to a higher expression of the world, of spirit, and through our actions. So together, beloved community, Tulsa Center for Spiritual Living, let us continue to embrace our differences, to be mindful and respectful of those differences, and to know that together we are strong. And so it is.